Welcome to Blender. In this video, we are going to take our sign and mark some seams, optimize the geometry, get it unwrapped, put some textures on it, bake them, and upload it to Second Life. So to get started, we're going to go ahead and optimize the geometry first. So if you hit Tab after you select your sign, the bottom here, we ain't ever going to see it, so I'm just going to go to Face Select by hitting 3, select it, and hit X and delete faces. Up here, we have this area here. It's probably going to cause us problems later, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and separate this part. So I'm going to select these faces of the stick here, hit P, and separate it by selection. That way it's its own separate piece now. That way I can go ahead and I'm going to hide this part, and I'm just going to delete these faces also, and hit X, and then go into edge select mode, select those two, and just fill it. That way it's by itself, and then back into object mode and hit Alt H. That'll just make this unwrap a little better. So that's all for the optimization. Now we can go ahead and mark some seams on this guy. So I'm going to select my pole, and it's still connected to the other parts, and hit Tab, go into edit mode, hit 2 for edge select, and I'm going to grab this edge back here, and I'm just going to Alt select it, and that'll select the whole way up. And then at the very top, I'm just going to select those 4 edges also, and right click, mark seams. So that should unwrap our pole. Our little post here, I'm going to go back into object mode, select a post, and go back into edit mode. And I'm going to select a bottom edge, and then those 3 edges. We can go 4. We'll go all 4. And right click, mark seams. So that'll make that its own piece, and unwrap that. It'll just fold out. For the loops, we can go ahead and hold Alt and select a center loop, and then same with the other guy. Shift Alt, select that inner loop. I'm going to hit Alt Z, and I'm going to find the part that's inside that. Shift Alt and select the part that's inside, and Shift Alt and select that loop. So you won't see those seams because they're inside the post here. And right click, mark seams. Back into solid view by Alt Z, and I'm going to select the inside here so that we can get this unwrapped. So Alt and select that, Shift Alt, select this one and the other side, and the bottom. And we'll do the same on the other side. Oops. And go ahead and right click, mark seams on those. So that gets our interface unwrapped. And I'm going to select this loop here by hitting Alt and selecting it, and right click, mark seam, and that'll take care of the whole outside edge. We can also select these, and that'll make it unwrap a little better. I'm just selecting the outsides, not the edge. So this one and this one. Make sure I got them all. That's pretty good. You can select these two if you like also. It should help it unwrap a little straighter. So, and once you got all those marked, that's not going to work. If we want to do that, we also got to select these ones. So the inside edges. Yeah. Ooh. I think it would have been easier just to alt select all of those and deselect the edge parts, but that's fine. And we got to get to this side also. So that one, that one. That one's already selected. This one. This one. And I'll show you what this does when I unwrap it. And that guy. And right click Mark Seams. So that should be the inside edges, but not the outside edge of all of them. So that should take care of our unwrap. So we can go into UV editing. Hit period on numpad to zoom in on this. Hit A, U, and unwrap. And we end up with this. So this is our post. These two guys are our rings. That's the little top. Yep, that's the little top. Where is our stick? Oh, our stick's not connected. So let's hit tab, go back into object mode so we can shift select the stick. And I'm just going to hit Control J and join those back together now. Now I can hit tab, A, and then we'll unwrap it again. There we go. So now we have our stick, both our end caps, both of our rings, both of our sign faces, our edge that goes all the way around. And if you see, this is where it cut those edges when I put the seams here but not there. So this little part would be the outside, and this edge and this edge are both the inside edges. So it unwrapped nice and straight. If you don't do that, it'll be a big curly thing. This thing, we have to straighten it. So we'll go ahead and straighten it now. So I'm going to select these two and SX0. Select those two, SX0. Select these two, SY0. And select that one. Oh, I'm on edge selecting a vertex select up here, or you can hit one on the keyboard. This one and this one, SY0. So now that face is perfectly square. Hit 3, select that face, and hit L. And then we can right click follow active quads, and that'll square that whole guy up. Kill that texture because I'm not using it. So now we have all our parts. So I know this face and this face we're going to do a different way later, so I'm just going to move them out of the way. And the rest of this stuff we need to arrange. So I'm just going to select them all and scroll across up here and go to UV average island scale and then UV pack islands. Now I want to make sure, and it is, I can just tell by the geometry. So this thing's pointing up and down like it should be. I know because these things are longer than these, so that would be this guy and those. And then at the bottom, it's the opposite, so that's bigger and those are smaller, and then it goes long. So I know it's the right orientation. This, we're probably going to want turned the other way because the grain is probably going to be running this way, but we should probably put a texture on here first. So let's go into shading. And I was already messing around, so let me delete all this. And I have my wood selected. And if I mouse up here and hit period on numpad, it'll zoom in on our post for us. And go into material preview so we can see, and we just have our wood color on there right now. It's just a base color. But I want to get a texture online and put it on here. So we're going to use some new textures called Pbr Textures, and they come with a bunch of maps, and with Node Wrangler it makes it real easy to use them. So I'm going to drop this down, open up the internet, and I'm going to type in free Pbr Wood Texture. And let's see. So sharetextures.com I know has a nice one, so I'm going to go to that website. And if you go over here, you can see all the different stuff. We probably want like fine wood, so I'm going to click, what is this, mess? close that. So now we're on fine wood, and we can just look for a nice texture. And this one looks really good. 3 years ago, it's fine wood. That one's pretty cool. These two are nice. That one's interesting. But you just pick one you like, and as long as it's free, just download it. So I'm going to choose this one. I think well, that's patron only. So this one. So you click on it, and this will pop up. And then it brings us, and I'm going to drop this down. And right here is a download. You can pick how high quality you want. I'm going to get 2K. So download 2K, and it'll download. Once that's done, I'll just close it. Close this. And I'm going to open my texture folder. I'm going to create a new file called wood. And open up another file explorer. Move this over here. Go to downloads. Nope, documents. Downloads. Drag the wood in here and drop it. And then I can close that one. And this one, I'm just going to throw it into the wood file. Open up the wood file. Right click on it. And just extract all right here inside the wood file. And that opens that up. So we can close those. And go back to Blender. So to use that file we just downloaded, you just select your green Principal BSDF, and if you hit Control Shift T, it'll open up a file browser, and you can go to the texture folder, into the wood, into the fine wood, and you'll see you get a bunch of maps. So if you just box select those maps and select Principal Texture Set, it'll build everything for you. And it puts the wood texture on there. And it looks like the wood texture is running the wrong way. So I'm going to go back to my UV editing. And I'll move this down so I can see up here. And scroll across up here and go to the material preview so you can see the wood. And I'm going to turn my overlays off so I can see the texture better. So now I can see what's going on. So if I hit A and rotate everything 90, that'll be a good start. And I'm just going to put that there. This is running the right way now. This is running the right way. The rings don't matter. This is all running the right way also. And it looks good. I've got the nice mitered edges because of how I cut it apart. Man, it's all running nice. And the scale doesn't look horrible. But I kind of want to use a little more texture space. So I'm going to select everything and scale it up just a hair to where my top UV is. There. I'm going to grab this one. And I'm going to scale it down a little bit to make it fit. I keep hitting F by accident. That's better. That's our stick, and the texture looks good on there. We're not using a whole lot of texture space, but that's okay. And let's check our end caps. They look pretty good. Yep, I'm happy with those. So now we have that, but if you look up here, it's looking a little bit janky. So I'm going to turn my overlays back on. And there's not a lot of geometry here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a loop cut in the center here and one in the center here. And then I'm going to hit L on it and right click and subdivide it. Just one time. And that cleans up all that wiggly stuff, or most of it anyway. And I'm happy with that. So we've got that part done. Now I want to see this how it's going to be rendered. So we're going to jump back into layout. And if your post is not centered up, we can go into edit mode and select this bottom edge here, and then do a Shift S, cursor to selected, and then back in object mode. We're going to reset our origin. So we're going to do origin to 3D cursor, which will put our origin at the bottom of our post right in the center. And then we want our 3D cursor back in the center, so I'm going to hit Shift C, and that'll center that back in the center. And then if you hit Alt G, that'll put our post right at the world origin and 3D cursor, because it goes where the point of origin is. So now I'm going to make a plane and just scale it up because I want something for light to bounce off of, and I'm going to go to material properties and just throw a regular material on there. Then I'm going to make a light source, so Shift A, mesh, nope, Shift A, light, and I'm just going to make an area light. Easy, move it up, scale it bigger, and I'm going to turn the power up to like 2000. And if you don't see this, just click your light bulb icon there. And now I'm going to go into rendered mode. And your file's probably still in EV, so if it says EV and it's doing that janky stuff there, just switch it to cycles and GPU compute. And if you want, you can turn the viewport rendering down a little bit. Mine runs fine at 1024, but you can put it at 64 because this only matters of what you're viewing in the viewport. The baking actually matters down here. And while we're here, go ahead and change this to 1024, because if you try to bake there, if your computer's not really good, that 4096 will just crash you. So at this point, let's go ahead and save our file. So file, save. And that'll save over the old file because we did a lot of work here. And this is what it's looking like so far. And it's not looking bad. I think it's a little dark, so I'm going to select my light again. And here, and then I'm going to change it to like 3000. See what, whoop, not 300. That's better lighting, I think. I'm kind of happy with that one. Okay, let's get some color on our rings now. Our rings have color, but it's just not very good color. So I'm going to go back into shading. Make sure I'm in rendered mode up top here. Hit period on number pad for my scene again. I'm going to select my sign and hit period on number pad again. I'm going to move this down here, zoom in on the rings. And pick my ring texture, which changes this down here. So now we can zoom in here and actually change what the rings look like. So I'm going to turn the metallic all the way up, give it some metallic, turn the roughness down till I'm happy with it. And that doesn't look too horrible. I could turn my overlays off to see it better. And I'm really happy with that. So that's done. Now, if we go back to UV editing, and I'm going to select part of the sign here and hit period because I want to zoom in on this. So we're going to be unwrapping this part by itself. It's still part of the same UV map, but it sets it up to hold a texture by itself. So I'm going to go into face select, which is 3, and I'm just going to grab the whole front side here. You can also just take the front and just hit select. Make sure you don't have anything selected. Hit select, and that'll select the front. And then I'm just going to do U, unwrap, and that puts it on there. And I want to kind of center it up, so I'm going to hit A, G, X, and I'm just going to move it till it's pretty close to center. And I'm happy with that. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. So I'm going to select these faces, hit U, unwrap, hit A, G, X, and center it up. That looks good. So now, with it done like this, we're actually not going to bake those. We're just going to make it so you can throw a texture in Second Life right on it. And the way this is, when you throw a texture on here, whatever's inside this area will show exactly inside this area. So just for some clarification before we bake this stuff, you can change the direction of your texture with the texture coordinate node. So if we go to the shading and we go over to the texture coordinate node, or the mapping node, which is the purple one, and I turn my overlays back on and go into edit mode. Actually, I don't need to be in edit mode. You can change the rotation of like the X, and it'll move it that way, and Y and Z. But I'd prefer to change the direction of the UV than changing the direction of the texture, because it's just easier. Because you can look at the UV editor and you can go to the map here and we can actually add our wood fine diffuse and see which way the texture is running, and then we can turn our UV accordingly. And it's just easier to rotate this than it is to rotate this, because then you got to figure out which one's which, and it's just easier. So I'm going to set these back to 0. That way everything's lined up properly. Also, let's say on the front of your guy, I'm going to hit period on number pad to find my principal BSD. I'm going to hit Control Shift or Control T, and I'm going to bring up a texture node, and that turns that pink because there's no texture on it. And I'm going to click Open, and I'm going to just grab a random texture here, like I don't like that one. That's where's my miscellaneous file at. There we go. Nope. We'll put, what do I want to put on there? Here, this will be good. So I've got Jack on there, and Jack's directly center, but Jack's only directly center because if you go back to the UV editing tab and you select these faces, you can see that it's in the center of the texture, and you can change this also to the new Jack hit. So the reason he's in the center is because the UV's in the center, but if you remember when we unwrapped it, let me unwrap it again. It put it there, which makes Jack's head not center. That's why I centered this. So if I hit GX, move it back over, I can put him anywhere I want to. Remember, you have to keep your UV map in the space if you want to bake a texture. So that looks pretty good there. And I'll leave him be. So if you want the texture to line up properly, you kind of need that. We're not going to be baking this, so the size of it doesn't matter, because if you hit A over here, you can see that there's overlapping UVs now. As long as you have different materials and you're not baking some of them, the overlapping won't matter. And we'll get into the mapping later, where we can put all these on the same UV at the same size, but that's a more advanced technique, and I plan on doing it soon because it's cool. So we're going to go ahead and bake this thing. So I'm going to go to shading, and I don't want to bake my front or back. I just want to bake these two. So we're going to start with our rings since they're at the top, and I'm going to hit Q and add new image texture for the millionth time. Shift A, texture, image texture, and you can right click to add it to quick favorites. We're going to create a new one, and I'm going to just leave it at 1024 for now, and we're going to name it signpost bake. And I'm always in caps lock because Blender loves turning my caps locks on. And click OK. And then we're going to right click and copy that. We're going to put it in our wood, and I'm going to hit period just to kind of find it and do a Control V, and I'll move that there. And that gives us our second one. Remember, you need to make sure that they're both selected. That one is, and our sign selected. Now we can go to the rendering tab, pick the samples. Max samples, I'm not going to bake it that high. I'm just going to bake it at 512. And scroll down and click bake. It gives you no active found for back object post, but that's fine because we're not baking those. And it should work just fine. And there's our bake. And the wood looks good. That black hole is where the signpost is pointing. These are just some lighter areas from where the light's hitting it. So it all looks good. So now we can go back to layout. Why did that change? Oh, that changed because it rebaked over our thing. So if we go to front and go to the shading tab and just delete this guy off of here, it'll go back white. and the material is still assigned to it. We can double check it, make sure our material is assigned correctly. So if we go to front and go into edit mode, deselect everything and click select, that selects the front, so that means that's a face in Second Life. And we can check the back, select, that's a face in Second Life. So all these materials are faces in Second Life, but the texture will only apply to the ones we lay it on. So if we lay it on the rings and the wood, those are the only things that will get colored, and then we can put a different texture on the other two faces. So back to layout, back in object mode, hit N, go to item, and it's 5 meters tall. That's too much, so we're going to scale it down to about probably about 2 meters. And right there. I'm going to zoom in on it. I'm going to hit Q and do all transforms. Also, object, apply, all transforms. That's where that's at. And this should be ready for export now. So, file, export, Colada, operator presets, SL OpenSim static, selection's good. I'm turning copy off. I'm going to go to desktop and find our folder. Where's the signpost? And we don't need this DAE, so I'm just going to ignore it. I'll just name this signpost, and I'll hit the. It's already named signpost, so I'll just click the plus to add a 1. So this one's signpost, this is signpost 1. And export Colada. So me and my infinite wisdom forgot to save the texture. So go to shading, and if your texture's still over here, which it should be, if not, you can hit this drop down and actually find the one that's baked. And it's actually even named wrong, but that's okay. So I'm going to hit the little 3 little dots and go to image, save as, and desktop, Blender, signpost, and I'm just going to save it in here as signpost. Bake. And save. Alright, now we're good. So I'm going to drop out of here and go into Second Life. And halfway invisible there. Build, upload, mesh model. We don't want the bridge, so I'm going to go up and find a signpost. Signpost 1. Click it. Have a look at it. Everything looks like it's all the right orientation and everything. Physics, I'm still going to just use a cube. That should be okay. You won't be able to walk under it, but we'll get into making physics models for things later. But for now, this is going to be fine. Calculate weights and fees. And it's 3 land impact. 3 land impact's a bit much, so I'm going to turn this to 0. Which enables you to see it from like half a sim away or 2 sims away. I'm going to rename it because I don't want signpost 001. We'll just put signpost model. And then calculate the weights and fees again. Now it's half a land impact, which is good, and we can upload it. Res it out. Have a look at it. That's a little dark, that's a little dark, and those have a material on them, so I'm just going to right click it, edit it, go to texture, go to color, change it all to white, and click OK, and then upload our texture. So upload image, there's our bake, and click upload, and then we can go ahead and kill that, and we can put our texture on our post, and that's really dark. That's very, very dark. Doesn't look good at all. But let's test our other stuff. I'm just throwing those on to make sure they're different materials. I'm going to go back up to our signpost here. And I'm going to put the signpost on there. Make sure they're looking okay. And I'm probably going to rebake this because that's very dark. Could be my settings because I like everything dark in Second Life. But those don't look bad. But this looks terrible. I'm going to hit it full bright and just check it out. Yeah, it may just be my settings. But I did see a dark line down the side here, and I don't know what that is. So something's not right with our bake. So I think I know what's wrong with the bake. We're going to jump back into Blender. If you remember in the last video, I told you about hiding the cup so it didn't mess with our bake. Well, I have another sign here, and if you look, my render is still turned on. So if I cut my render off and we rebake this, it should be fine. But I am going to crank up the lighting because it is a little dark. So I'm going to turn the lighting to like 4,000, not 40,000. And that lights it up a little more. I'm actually going to move the light down a little bit too. And that should be much better. Alright, back to shading. And click on this. And I'm going to go back to my wood. That's good. Rings. That's good. So I have my object selected and both my texture nodes selected. So I'm going to go back to bake, or back to the render panel and back down to bake and just click bake. And it should actually bake correctly this time with the correct name because last time I had the wrong thing selected and it did over the front texture. But that looks way better. We don't have that black at the top now because that's what the problem was. I had the render turned on and I had another signpost underneath the signpost and it was blocking the texture. So we can save this one. Image, save as, and we can just cover right over top of that one. Back into Second Life. Back into here and we'll upload a new image. And that's our new one. Upload. I probably should have renamed that, but we'll drop that on there. That's the right one. So I'm going to delete this one since I know it's the wrong one. And since I've changed the lighting, I'm going to go ahead and replace the... Yeah, those are a little brighter too. And now if you have a texture of an ad or a name of something, you can make one in Photoshop if you want and just throw it on there. We'll actually put that on there. See? That's our bake texture. So you can make a sign that matches up with that shape and just drop it right on there on both sides and you'll have a nice sign. That's it for this video. If you learned anything, give me a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.